So it is the last day of the month, so that can only mean one thing, but wrap-up time. So that's exactly what I'm here to do today, is my August wrap-up. Hello everyone, it is Samantha. I hope you guys had a really lovely August. Can't believe it's the end of the month, but I'm very happy because now we're so close to fall, less than 1 month until fall, and we're already getting fall weather because it's been a really stormy weekend. We've had a ton of rain and wind, and it's just been really, really lovely, and it makes me very happy. So I'm ready for autumn and the holidays, and whew. So as I said in the intro, I am here today to do my August wrap-up. I decided to split my wrap-up and TBRs into 2 separate videos because they were getting a little bit too long. This is one of my favorite videos to film because I like kind of doing an overview of all the books that I read in the month, as well as some of my reading statistics. So that is exactly what we're going to start with right now, is the statistics. So in the month of August, I read a total of 9 books. 4 of them were during the Booktubeathon, and the rest I read throughout the rest of the month, so that was exciting. Of the 9 books that I read, 7 of them were fantasy, 1 was a graphic novel, and 1 was a classic. I read a total of 4,186 pages, which averages to about 140 pages a day. In terms of book format, of the books that I read, 2 of them were hardbacks, although 1 was like flexi-bound, but I'm calling it a hardback. 3 were trade paperbacks, 1 was a mass market, 1 was a graphic novel, and 2 were ebooks. In terms of where the author was from, 6 of them were from the United States, 1 was from France, 1 was from the UK, and 1 was from Japan. In terms of years published, all of them were published from the year 2000 on, but 1 was published in the 1800s. That would be the classic. In terms of star rating, the books had a pretty good mixture of not so good to excellent, and they were pretty much evenly split. So 3 of them were 2.5 stars, 3 of them 4 stars, and 3 of them were 5 stars. In terms of page length, quite a bit of them were chunkers, with 5 of them being over 400 pages. For gender this month, I read more female authors than male authors, with 6 of them being female and 3 of them male. Alright, so that's it for my statistics, and now I will get into the books and what I thought of them and all of that good stuff. So the first book that I finished, and this was the first read I completed for the Booktubeathon, was Zelda: A Link to the Past, a graphic novel by Satoru Ishinomori, I think is how you say his name. This was my very first Zelda game, actually, for the Super Nintendo. It was the first one I ever played, so when I saw it came out in graphic novel form, I had to get it. It was originally published in the Super Nintendo because they used to put comic books in the center of the Super Nintendo magazines. So it's very much 80s 16-bit art style, and it's fantastic. I really, really thought this was quite fun. I love Zelda. Of course, I'm actually in the process of making a Link costume for Halloween, so I'm very excited about that. So big fan of Zelda. Really enjoyed this. I thought it was a lot of fun. If you've played the game, then you will know the general story, that they did add some twists that were different from the game, which I thought was pretty cool. But I really enjoyed it, and overall I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Next read that I completed was a review copy of Impetus Soul by Gail Robinson. I received this from the author in exchange for an honest review, which I have done, and I will link down below if you guys are curious. This is a fantasy sci-fi mix type of a book. It features both magic system, like a planet where these people are mages and they kind of live in a medieval feudal society, and they also have people, humans, invading their planet from space, so it's kind of a mixture of sci-fi and fantasy. Overall, it wasn't my favorite story. I left a bit to be desired. It fell a little bit flat for me, but it still had a lot of promise, and it also has some really cool artwork inside of it, kind of anime-esque sort of art style, and I ultimately ended up rating this book 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I completed this month and was also part of the Booktubeathon was The Broken Blade by Kelly MacLeod. The Broken Blade follows a young thief/assassin who used to be part of an order that was devoted to this goddess. This goddess was built around justice, so they were trained as blades to mete out the goddess justice, but one day the goddess is killed and the entire order ends up becoming disbanded. So it follows Arl, who is one such blade that is kind of fighting for his life because there are people who work for the other gods who want to kill all of the blades. And he kind of gets swept up into the world's politics, discovers that there are other blades still alive, and they are kind of trying to create their own assassin skills. So he kind of gets caught up in the world's politics. The story was interesting in that it features some very interesting takes on magical elements. For instance, the blades all have shadow familiars, so it's a separate being that is attached to them as a shadow, and they lend their strength and have their own set of powers. So that was pretty interesting. But overall, I did not much care for the book. I thought that it left a little bit to be desired. It felt very tropey. It felt felt very flat. The characters all felt kind of the same. Arl, the main character, was kind of annoying, so that kind of sucked since it was told from his perspective. Just overall, I was not the biggest fan of the book and ended up rating it 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read The Rose and Thorn by Michael J. Sullivan. This is his second book in the Rhaenyra Chronicles series, which are the prequel novels to his Rhaenyra Revelation series. So it follows Royce and Hadrian before the events in Theft of Swords and all of his other books. I really enjoyed it. I love being back with Royce and Hadrian and learning more about how they met and kind of made the bond that you see in the Revelations books. Don't want to give too much away because it is the second one of the prequel novels, but suffice it to say I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of humorous moments, a lot of heart-wrenching moments, and overall was just extremely enjoyable, and I love this one even more than the first prequel novel. Ah, so good, and ended up rating it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished this month was The Golden Fool by Robin Hobb, the second book in the Tawny Man trilogy. This picks up exactly where Fool's Errand, the first book in the trilogy, left off, so it follows Fitz and the Fool as they kind of try to deal with the piebald plot, as well as the Prince Dutiful's betrothal. Really enjoyed it. Oh, so good. It was so good, guys. Particularly the ending was excellent. I just love Robin Hobb. This book definitely started to get very emotional towards the end, which definitely carried on into the third book. Really good. Loved it to bits and rated it 5 out of 5 stars. And the next book I finished in August was Serafina by Rachel Hartman. This follows our young protagonist, Serafina, who is half dragon, half human in a world where humans live alongside dragons amid an uneasy truce. And dragons are a little bit interesting that they have the ability to turn into human form. And basically Serafina ends up getting caught up in a plot that could potentially overthrow the uneasy truce between humans and dragons, and throw the world back into war. Overall, I really didn't much care for this book. I felt that it was a little bit dull. The characters weren't very well fleshed out. The world itself was very interesting. I think that she did depict the world this takes place in a very interesting way that felt very vivid and magical. But the characters themselves, I just did not... They lacked personality, I think. The dragons in particular, because the dragons are meant to be lacking emotions, since they think emotion is a disease. But though that is an interesting concept and twist to take with dragons, it left them all feeling exactly the same. So they were very unexciting, since they all sounded like the exact same character. So that was a little bit annoying. There were some very interesting, unique things added to this book, such as the fact that she kind of has this psychic link to these people that she calls grotesques, because she doesn't really know who or what they are, but they're kind of in her mind, and she has kind of the psychic link to them, but if she allows them to overpower her, she'll kind of black out. So she has this sort of like a mind palace, like if you're familiar with Sherlock, he has a mind palace. So she kind of has that where she tends them, only it looks like a garden, and that was kind of interesting. But overall, I just didn't much care for the book. It was not my favorite read of the month at all. I don't know if I'll continue on with Shadow Scale, and I will have a full review of this book up soon. I filmed it yesterday, so hopefully it will be up in the next week or two. But overall, I was not the biggest fan of the book, and I ended up rating it 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read this month is my favorite read of the month and this year, and that is Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. The last book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and basically a culmination of everything laid out in the first 2 trilogies, and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. All I have to say is that it is worth reading all of Robin Hobb's works just to get to this one book. That was how good it was. I absolutely adored it. I cried pretty much from this point on. I was in tears the entire time, and I don't get emotionally affected by books very often. It's really hard to make me cry when we're all reading, and this book did it more than once. It was fabulous. I rate this 10 out of 10 stars. I will go beyond 5. That was how good it was. It was amazing. The way that she's been able to weave all of the storylines from all of her books together into this one was amazing. And Fitz and the Fool are 2 of my favorite characters ever, and their relationship is absolutely beautiful, and just everything about this series was amazing, and this book itself is just so good. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk about Hobb, but seriously guys, it was excellent. So I cannot wait to continue on with the rest of her books. I do know that the next one is the Rainwilds Chronicles, and then the last one that which she is currently writing is the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. So I cannot wait to continue on and see what's going to happen, especially with the way this ended. It's going to be insane. It's going to be good. So yes, as I said, I rate this one 10 out of 10 stars. I don't think I've ever done that, but it was that good, guys. That good. Also, I'd like to say, if you guys don't typically read fantasy or you're new to the genre, I really think Robin Hobb is a good place to start, even if fantasy isn't your favorite genre, because a lot of her themes are pretty universal, and just the way that she writes, I think, would appeal to a lot of non-fantasy readers. That is how good she is. It's fabulous. guys. It's fabulous. The last two books that I have to show you guys are ones that I'm currently reading but almost done with. This is being pre-filmed, so I do anticipate finishing them before the month of September, so I'm going to include them. The first one is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I only have about 150 pages left, so I should be finishing this one today. This is sort of a fairy tale retelling, but it's kind of a conglomeration of a lot of different fairy tales with a lot of its own unique twists. So it's kind of Beauty and the Beast and Rapunzel and Cinderella, like a whole bunch of different fairy tales you can kind of see reflected in this work. But it follows our young protagonist, Angeniska, I think is her name, and she is taken by the dragon. The dragon is not an actual dragon, that is just kind of his nickname, if you will, his title. And he is supposed to guard the surrounding area from this evil wood. This wood that will take over and possess people, kind of like, almost like there's demonic presences in the wood almost. That's how it will affect people, possess them and make them bring harm to themselves and other people. He's meant to protect all of the surrounding, this whole kingdom basically, from this wood. And every 10 years he'll take a young girl to live with him in his tower. Nobody really knows what goes on there, but every 10 years they come back out and they're basically like a well-born noble lady, like he obviously teaches them to become a little bit more high-born, I guess. But Angeniska is, of course, taken. Much to her chagrin, she didn't think she would be chosen, but she is. And she ends up discovering some very interesting things about herself, really who the dragon is and what is at stake in this kingdom. Overall, I really ended up enjoying this book. I really like Naomi Novik's writing. It is a little bit simple, but it's really enjoyable and beautifully written. I think it makes it really a joy to read. I really like the main character of Angeniska. I really liked her personality, and she was kind of spitfire, didn't really care what anybody else thought of her. She was going to do her own thing, and I thought that was really great. I think it's just a really, really fun book, and I like the twist on the fairy tales. I don't typically like fairy tale retellings, but this one actually I think was done pretty well. And yes, I really enjoyed it. I thought the plot was interesting. I've been really liking how everything's been kind of unfolding and some of the twists that we've had, and it's just been a really enjoyable read. So overall, I would rate this book 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read this month, or I will be finishing in the next 2 days, and finally, at last, is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. This is a very, very fun book, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Three Musketeers, but basically it follows D'Artagnan and his 3 musketeer friends, Aramis, Porthos, and Athos. And it is so much fun. It kind of follows their adventures and their misadventures as they navigate the machinations of the cardinal and try to protect themselves, the queen, and their master, Treville. So it has been a really enjoyable read. It's taken me far longer than I intended to read it, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I was getting sidetracked with a lot of other books and buddy reads. But I really, really, really liked this book. It was just so entertaining. There was like a lot of humor in the book, and there was a lot of swashbuckling adventures, and I really highly enjoyed it. It's just a really fun classic to read. And some of the themes are pretty universal no matter the time period you live in. So I really enjoyed it, and I ended up rating it 4 out of 5 stars, and I cannot wait to continue on with the Count of Monte Cristo. Alright guys, that is it today for my August wrap-up. Read a lot of books this month. I wasn't expecting to read that much, but I think in part during the Booktubers I was on vacation, so that kind of helped gain a lot of reading done. But yeah, I don't know, I had a kind of a good mix of books this month, but let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and let me know if you have any questions and I'll try to answer them for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and until next time, happy reading. Bye!